now so we don't have background noise. Our speaker is Jeff S. Welcome, Jeff.
Jeff, is it okay if we record this and put the audio only on YouTube?
Sure, that's fine.
Thanks.
Okay, well,
And Jeff, how would you like your time, sir?
I guess give me 10 minutes and then a couple minutes before I'm supposed to be done. I guess
Okay.
it's 20 altogether, right?
Yep. All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
Well, I'll start off.
Okay, hold on a second. By the way, Jeff, there's no royalties for your thing on YouTube.
Oh,
Let me
man.
introduce you for a few seconds. I have known Jeff for many years. It's a privilege to be able to do a service at this meeting, and Jeff has taught me the importance of doing service in order to keep his abstinence. And he has, well, we can spend 5 minutes talking about the service he has done. So I think you'll all appreciate his qualification. All right, Jeff.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that, the kind words. Well, I'll give you my qualification. I'm Jeff, a compulsive overeater and a food addict. I've been in OA for 30 years, as of last December. And I'm a relapse survivor. Never got kicked off the island, though. I've stayed at OA. And but my current abstinence is a little over 7 years, and I'm maintaining a 95-pound weight loss. So those are my basic statistics. And I'll tell you briefly what I was like before program. I was a little food addict. I grew up as a little food addict. I didn't know I was a little food addict, but I was. I can remember at 8 years old eating more slices, more scoops than probably my father and my siblings combined. I am a binge eater. I used to get into these fights with my mother, who was a good cook and who liked to cook healthy foods. And I pretty much just wanted peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And that was, very frustrating for her. I don't get into any discussion as to whether I was born this way or whether I became a food addict just through my overeating and binging. It doesn't matter. I am a food addict. Briefly, this relates to the spiritual part of the program. I was brought up by two non-religious Jewish parents who forced me to go to Hebrew school 3 times a week, against my will. And we didn't really talk about God. There was nothing at all about God in my house. My parents were culturally Jewish. They were not spiritually Jewish. The only time they may have mentioned God is if by accident I heard them, my mother may say the word or the phrase, "Oh God," but I don't think when I passed their bedroom and she was saying that, I don't think it was related to praying. I really kind of doubt it. And so I was raised by two non-religious parents and pretty much was agnostic until I came into the program. I started going on strange diets when I was in my teens. These are all diets that I created myself. I say they're strange because they were diets of foods that I thought would cause me to lose a lot of weight quickly. And it started when I was a teenager, mainly because I wanted to attract a woman, or a girl, I should say, at that point. And so I would go on diets. I would eat like a hot dog a meal a diet for 30 days, lose about 25 pounds, be in good shape. And that was followed by, let's say, a yogurt a day diet for 30 days. And that's all I would have is like one yogurt every meal for 30 days. But it didn't make any sense anyway, because I was too shy to even introduce myself to any girls, even in late high school. So my initial reason for dieting was to try and meet a woman. When I got into college, I did the same thing. I would lose a lot of weight, and then, of course, since I'm a compulsive overeater, I'd gain it back very quickly. It made no sense, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I was a food addict. I didn't know I was a compulsive overeater until I came into the program. I came into the program, I first came into a program for codependency issues when I got divorced in 1990. And, you go into one meeting and you find out about other meetings. I kind of sensed I had an eating problem, eating disorder. And so I started to see that the churches I was going to had OA meetings, and I started going to OA meetings in late 1990. And I was kind of at a bottom at that point. I had just gotten divorced. My finances were in really bad shape. I'm a compulsive over-worrier and a compulsive overthinker. And so I was worrying about money. I was worrying about relationships and never had any peace of mind. What I actually had was pieces of cake. Because when I was in that state of mind where I'm worrying and I'm frustrated and stuff is happening, I was trained from a very early age to quell those feelings by eating. And not broccoli. I was not eating a lot of broccoli. I am a sugar refined flour addict. Also, anything that's salty, crunchy, that has fat in it, I will binge on that. And I'm a binge eater. So during that period of my life, after I'd gotten divorced and had relationship issues, I was binging on those foods every day. And I would eat to the point of feeling sick. I would eat so much of this junk food that I would feel sick. I'm not a bulimic, but there were occasions where I had to force myself to throw up so I'd feel better. So when I came into 12-step programs, not only for codependency issues, but for compulsive eating, my life was definitely unmanageable. No question about it in so many areas, not just the eating, but also in my finances, in my love life, and just how I thought. My thinking was really askew. I was the kind of person that I would think I could solve all my problems through my own analytical abilities. By training, I'm a lawyer, and, I was used to analyzing situations and figuring out the answer to everything and looked at facts. It did not help me with the compulsive eating, the compulsive worrying. And so I came in to program relying on my thinking power, my reasoning ability. And that got me nowhere. That just made my life unmanageable. I was an agnostic. After about 6 months in program, that started to change because I was going to meetings where they read the chapter to the agnostic in the big book. And so I started to lose that God of reason, which I had worshiped my whole life. My higher power up to that point, before I came in program, was named Jeff. I was the higher power, and I relied on that. It's a real burden to have to figure out everything myself, to analyze everything myself. Came into program, as I said before, I was binging all the time. I was in my late 30s when I came in. I'm 67 now. And it was a really bad cycle. That mental obsession that the Big Book talks about was clearly in play. I would try and diet, and then I'd get that craving for my binge foods. I'd eat and I'd binge. I'd feel remorseful, and then I would do it again. Unfortunately, when I was, just before I came into the program, I was living down the street. It was really a half a block away from a 7-Eleven, a pizza place, and a Chinese restaurant. It was like a food addict's heaven, or I should say strip mall. I came in, and when I started going to meetings, I did become spiritually curious. And that's the great aspect of 12-step programs. You can have whatever view of a higher power or God that you want. I started off agnostic, and then slowly over time, I did develop a feeling and a sense of a higher power. The big book talks about having different types of spiritual awakenings. Mine was was really not the sudden spiritual transformation that people in the big book had, like Bill Wilson or some of these other folks. Mine was the slow educational variety, and so that started to happen as I stayed in program. And I did get a degree of God consciousness at some point. It wasn't anything spectacular. And became abstinent. I was in the program about a year, and I was abstinent, cleanly abstinent. Within a few months, I learned about food addiction. I gave up all my addictive foods and food ingredients, and I was not binging anymore. I was going to meetings. And so in the first year and a half, 2 years in program, I lost about 80 pounds.
And that's 10 minutes, Jeff.
Thank you. Lost about 80 pounds, and the physical part of the disease was in check. However, just going to meetings, we have a saying, meeting makers make it. I never made it because that was the only thing I was doing. I was going to meetings. I wasn't working the steps those first few years. So, as is the case with a lot of people, when you're not working the steps, I started to get that mental obsession. In life, great philosopher said, shit happens, and shit started to happen in my life, and I was not using the program to cope with stuff. And so what happened? Well, I started to get food thoughts. I could not fight the food thoughts, and went into a really bad relapse. I was in relapse for at least a couple years. I had not been working the steps thoroughly. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't sponsoring anybody during that time. And my relapse went off and on for a number of years. But, as I said before, I kept coming back. I never stopped coming to meetings. Eventually, I started to attend Big Book meetings and Big Book weekends. And strangely enough, there was a different message that I got from people I listened to. And that's the thing, people who are struggling in program like I was, relapsing, the answer is really just to see what successful people in program are doing. And so I started, I don't know why I didn't think of this, but I started to ask people questions who had been abstinent for years. What are you doing on a daily basis to stay abstinent? And I don't know why I didn't think of that. Mostly the solution was working the steps. It's pretty simple, but there's a little more to that. It had a lot to do with doing the steps every day. I had been through Big Book weekends. I had worked through the steps in men's groups. And this might be in poor taste to say this, but I thought after I would do a step book group that I would be inoculated, that I would stay abstinent. But I didn't realize that this is a program that requires daily work. It really, for me, that was a realization that I had to work the steps every day. Now, what does that mean? Well, for someone who's gone through the 12 steps several times, what it meant for me was to work the maintenance steps. And so about 7.5 years ago, I had that realization, and I started to work the maintenance steps every day. And you know what? I was granted the miracle of abstinence. And, you know, I have been doing that ever since. Every day I work the maintenance steps. I realize that if I don't do those maintenance steps, 10, 11, and 12, every day, I will probably start to get food thoughts. If I ever get food thoughts and those thoughts become fixed, I'm sunk. And what that means is those food thoughts will lead me to pick up. And so I try and work 10, 11, 12 every day. In the mornings, I do a daily inventory. I use the Region 7 journal. That has a really a good page to do the questions that, you know, they kind of align with the big book questions about whether during the previous day I was selfish or resentful or dishonest or jealous or irritable, restless or discontent. And I write down if I owe somebody an apology. I write down what I could have done better. What did I do well during the day? I even do the little prayer that they have. And I do it every day. Now I'm retired, so I have time to spend whatever amount of time I want on that. And I do it though, because for me it has been an important factor in my staying abstinent. So in addition to the daily inventory, one other thing that's helped me is to pray and meditate. As I said before, I came in an agnostic. So this notion of prayer and meditation was foreign to me. And it took me years to not only have the willingness to do it, but to get something out of it. And so every day I have a group of big book prayers that I read, generally the 3rd step prayer, the 7th step prayer, the 9th step prayer, the 11th step prayer, and I try and spend time reading them. It's kind of supposed to be a stairway or communion with God. I have the kind of mind that doesn't stay quiet real long, so I have trouble when it comes to meditation, to actually focusing on something other than, you know, passing thoughts. But I do work at it, and I try and do that every day. The prayers, when I do read these prayers every day, I try and read them slowly. I try and read them for their meaning, their purpose. And when I do that, it really helps me a lot. I have to say, that helps me quite a bit. The other thing I'll mention is, and I think this has been a really important part of my staying abstinent. And I never did this before, but I've been doing service and sponsoring for a number of years now. And it corresponds with when I became abstinent. I don't think it's any surprise or, you know, big deal that, you know, that doing service, sponsoring people, and doing the rest of the maintenance steps is what has kept me abstinent. What keeps us all abstinent. What kind of service do I do? Well, I'm an intergroup chair for South Jersey Intergroup. I have, of course, led meetings over the years. I'm also the Region 7 Outreach Chair. And more importantly, I sponsor. I really can't, I have to stress that has been a major factor in my staying abstinent, sponsoring other people. You know, I'm a compulsive overthinker and analyzer. I want to figure out exactly why that has worked.
That's 2 minutes left.
Almost done. Thank you. And I can't. And I'm not even going to try and figure it out. It just works when I do that service and I do the other steps. I do a lot of outreach. And I really do believe the big book slogan, which is you got to, in order to keep it, you have to give it away. And so I I make sure that I am available for service, even speaking here. So that's about it, but thank you for asking me to share. It's an honor to be at a men's meeting like this, and that's about it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Jeff.
The recording has stopped.
Okay,